Hi everyone, this is Mark, and I'm here with the European um, Meetup group, and I have the pleasure of convening some friends in the world of poetry and poetics to collaborate on a close but not too close readings of a poem. We talk, maybe disagree a bit, and open up the poem to some new possibilities. And today we will be talking about some versions of There is only there is another loneliness. There is another loneliness by Emily Dickinson, and this session will be unmod because that's what we usually not do in ModPo, that we talk about the publication history. Maybe we will also talk about the life of Emily Dickinson, which I also think is in the poem how it works. I will start reading the poem that was published on the ModPo site, and this is essay assignment number 1, a poem by Emily Dickinson. There is another loneliness that many die without. Not want or friend occasions it, or circumstances or lot. But nature sometimes thought, and whoso it befall, is richer than could be divulged by mortal numeral. My suggestion is that we talk about the differences in these versions. Or maybe I can start with this, that Emily Dickinson didn't publish her poems, and during her lifetime only a few poems were published by Thomas Wentworth Higginson. And I think it was her sister who found all these manuscripts, and the texts that she produced were not meant for publication. You have something that looks like a poem, and then there are certain words that are scratched out or they are not scratched out, and then she has different versions to that. And in 1955, there came a collection of Emily Dickinson poems by Johnson, and some years ago, a project that was already started at the end of the 1990s by Franklin. Franklin is nowadays the standard for the Emily Dickinson poems, and this is the version with the collection of all her poems. I gave you...
And here's the Johnson book. Well, our library actually had it, so.
This is mine. Different color.
Yeah.
Okay, and when you go to the Emily Dickinson archive, you can find all versions. Usually there are 4 versions, and I have sent them around, and maybe we can talk about these different versions. What did you see? What is different in these versions?
Well, you fumbled over circumstances because apparently it's only one circumstance in another version. And circumstance kind of fits in the meter a little better.
Yeah, that was a big part of my essay.
Franklin also has that. Franklin has 2 versions. The one that he published, and there he only has circumstance, and then he has another version where he has 2 suggestions: circumstances and circumstance. So even Emily Dickinson was wondering what to do. Singular or...
Well, yeah, I said I think it slows you down if it just almost brings you to a total stop. And your reading was really great, Mark, especially the mortal numeral. That is what a weird phrase.
That was when I was happy that it was over.
Which version are you referring to, Terry, with the circumstances? I'm having trouble loading I don't know if it's my internet connection or something, but which of the versions in particular is it, so I can do my best to try to call it up?
Well, the one in the essay assignment said,
oh yeah,
circumstances.
Right. Well, circumstances were a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
and the one in this, yeah.
I don't know where it comes from. Do you know, Stanley?
No, all I know is I've got a couple different versions of it, and I haven't really been able to.
But I just you hear that you come to a stop almost. So it's not really with the meter, and you have to give it another extra pause just to get going again. Which is kind of in a lot of ways okay. It's a little bit lonely out there in the
I mean, the argument that I made in my essay when I thought that the S was supposed to be there and didn't realize that this was something to be debated was that because it disturbed the meter, that what Dickinson was doing was showing that more isn't always better. And that when we put more and a fuller thing in, the whole is less than it would have been without that extra stuff. So I thought it was a meta thing. But then I found out the S might not have actually been there at all.
That's a good reading though. I like that. I mean, I stumbled across it as well, and over it when I was reading it. So I kind of looked up the Emily Dickinson archive thing where you can read her handwriting. And I think if I read it correctly, it looks like it's circumstance, at least in one of the pictures. I'm not sure if I can get a link or something, but it's just in the edickinson.org thing.
I can try and send it around. That's the one I'm able to open.
Yeah. But I mean, I like the reading that you did with the S, so maybe we could just add it in if you'd like to.
You know, it depends on what it's supposed to be. There is meaning either way. It's just a question of which was the one that was supposed to be there.
What's interesting, because they had some typos on the ModPo pages, and then they took the Franklin version, and Franklin version actually has circumstance, so singular, and I have no idea why they stuck to the plural.
In this one, on the Johnson one, this one.
Oh, Johnson is singular.
It's the same. Thomas Johnson. Well, the two things.
Also has singular, but in his critical version, he also has both circumstances and circumstance.
And then there's another word in the second to the last line. Is richer than could be revealed, as in Johnson, and then divulged.
Yeah.
The Johnson one says 1868. I haven't got a date for this one that we have on the ModPo page. Is it before or after?
Second, which year?
The date, because in Johnson's one, it's circa 1868, and I don't know which one came first. It's fun because divulge sounds more gradual, actually. For example, and revealed is more ordinary, let's say.
Franklin has 1867.
So this one is before. Okay, thanks. Yeah. But that's what poets do. Emily Dickinson really wasn't published too much, so she didn't fix anything. She didn't have to fix anything. It's like variations on Bach when he says you get to a certain point and then play whatever you think. No. So once the thing is published, it's been really fixed. It's fixed as permanent. But Emily Dickinson didn't have to be permanent, really, because she wasn't really subject to a publishing house.
What would you say is the better version?
I like circumstance, singular, and divulged instead of revealed.
Yeah, me too. But who knows what Emily was actually thinking, you know?
I was wondering what would be the difference in meaning if it is circumstance and circumstances. What would be the difference?
Oof. I mean,
if you just put singular.
It's the same. I think circumstance and circumstances are almost interchangeable in sort of casual English usage. I mean, that's why it's so interesting to think about the meter, as we were saying a moment ago.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
so disruptive of the meter as to be
Yeah.
it's to be surprising, right? Like why is the meter so disrupted here? But I think it's also the poem is like it's full of these like these sorts of slanty kind of games anyway. There's all these slant rhymes. The rhymes are really slant, right? Like lot and wait, is it no maybe.
Without and lot. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's not thought. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, without and lot, and then the fall and numeral, right? Like those are
Yeah.
really slanted rhymes. So it almost makes sense that there would be this moment of wobble in the rhythm. I'm looking at I don't know if it's the one that I just sent around because the Emily Dickinson archive is a little
Yeah,
clunky.
that's really slowly.
Yeah,
I was
right.
wondering
all the
if somebody
time.
could maybe put up a link to the versions, because I'm having trouble pulling up.
Yeah, I posted a link in the chat, Suzanne. You might
For
that's
some
one of
reason
the
my chat.
handwritten versions.
Okay. Oh, I see now. My chat was hidden. Thank you.
And the more I look at it, the more I'm starting to wonder, like, how much of this was mistranscribed, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Should it be not want or friend, or should it be not want of friend?
Yeah, the or and the of, same in the last line of the first stanza with circumstance of lot, or is it or lot? Because
Yeah.
in the ModPo version says or, but I think of would make more sense.
I think not
Yeah.
want of friend makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
Because want of friend, if you have want of a friend, that means you don't have a friend normally, right? So that would make
Yeah.
they would not want or friend, like it also makes sense, but it seems a little bit more roundabout.
Well, it's redundant, right? Because she then goes on to say or circumstance or circumstances or lots. And to me, want and circumstances and lot are kind of the same thing versus friends.
Yeah, I was wondering about that in English, because when in Dutch it could be a false friend, but lot is really when you look at the translation, it's like fortune, but in Dutch, lot is really like misfortune, so it's much less neutral than circumstance, and I don't know how that is. If that's the same in English.
I'm about
Yeah.
to open the dictionary here, Rune. We'll get some etymology here, but that's good.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think we used to say what's your fortune was like your fate. It was determined by you, and it could be good or bad fortune.
Also, one's lot is yeah, there's this sort of connotation of fortune, but I think there's also like, it's the sort of group to which you belong, right? So the circumstances of your lot, right? Like you are a New Englander in the 19th century. That is your lot. You're a farmer or something, or you're of the merchant class in New York. That is your lot, right? So those are the circumstances of your lot, right? Like the conditions of the social class or social group to which you belong. It would make sense.
Could we go back to circumstance? Because what you're saying, Max, I thought circumstance, like your circumstances, you're a child. But circumstances are groups of things that can come and go. But I consider circumstance or a lot as synonyms. Your circumstance, child. Your lot is that you're a child.
Right.
Yes, I agree. I think it overlaps. The meaning of circumstance and lot overlaps. Right?
Yeah, I think so too.
What about lot? What is the right spelling? Capital L or lowercase l?
Oh, always, lowercase l, unless you're referring to the biblical.
I'm referring to Emily Dickinson.
But that I mean, I don't know, is there somebody who's particularly versed in the stories of Genesis and what happened to Lot to tell us whether this makes any sense whatsoever?
I'm not, but I'm really used to cursive, and that's a definite capital L.
Yeah, that was the wife of Lot had his wife, and they were going out of the town of Sodom and Gomorrah, and she was very curious, which is what happened to Eve and Adam and Eve. She was very curious, and so she turns around, and she's turned into a pillar of salt. So I think Emily Dickinson does that on purpose to make us think about, if you don't obey, your lot is to be turned into a pillar of salt.
Yes, Max indicated the story of Lot in Genesis. I think that there's also what's behind that. Emily Dickinson was quite religious. She knew her Bible, and she included that. And with the capital L, capitalized, it looks like a name, right?
Yeah.
And you also have that idea in it.
But that's what poets do. They pile meanings to a word.
Or is it a lot? Okay, she doesn't have an article.
They don't. Exactly.
Maybe I would favor the plural of circumstances.
What would the connotations like mean in the context though, if we think about like the book Genesis and just the Bible and the story, and then about loneliness? But
Yes,
why would you use that intertextuality in this context?
What was it, Sodom and Gomorrah, and he went into the desert alone, and there you also have an allusion to loneliness.
So I'm looking at a version that's on the allpoetry.com site, and I don't know, they don't credit who they got it from, but they actually have lot capitalized.
Lot capitalized.
And they also have the revealed instead of the divulged in their version.
Yes, and I based my essay on that. And so I came up with a different take on reveal.
But if you capitalize lot, then that doesn't seem to kind of tie into a potential biblical reference there of him being the one good person who was allowed to leave without dying. that he was lonely while amidst all these people.
Before Lot comes or, in one version, or, and in Johnson's version, of, or circumstance of Lot.
Of Lot, yeah.
So, there we go. What do you think?
I mean, when I read it originally, I thought I read Lot as like your group of people. So that it's not for one or one of a friend or just a friend generally. It's nothing like no external circumstances of your lot of your group of people. That's how I read it, which is why I like the off because it then made a bit more sense to me. But the or just makes it a bit more interesting, I guess. Now, what do you think?
Yeah, it would be just redundant circumstance or lot in a lot of ways. You start splitting hairs between the meaning of those words, but circumstance of lot, then it makes it more like fate. And that it's put upon you rather than something that, that she has to take care of her ailing mother. That kind of thing is the circumstance of Lot. And she can't get out of it no matter how she tries, or whoever is in this situation. And it's definitely a capital L. I just, from the handwriting, it can't, because it'd be, do we have another L in this thing? Yeah, it's usually a looped, and it doesn't have the higher loop like it does in this handwriting.
So you've got the handwriting right there in front of you.
Yeah, well, yeah, that Max sent that link to, right, and it definitely looks like it's a cursive capital L, and so that's
when you go one page to the right, you get another handwritten version, and then it's definitely a small L.
Oh, now where's that?
Oh, I didn't check that. I remember that there were different versions.
Oh, in Befall, there's 2 small L's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are different. Yeah. Yeah, the small in befall, it's this, and the capital L would start up higher.
Oh, but in the second, wait, sorry, I had to step away for a second because one of my cats was like eating something it wasn't supposed to eat. Did you in the second one here, did you guys talk about the fact that it's in fact or circumstance of lot?
No, that it was with a small, not capitalized.
The one with the little L, yeah, that we were just.
Oh,
The preposition or linking word or whatever that is, or and of, yes.
It's I'm sending this link to y'all so you have it. I think this is the one you were just talking about, Jeroen, with the small L. Yeah. So it's or circumstances of lot. That's crystal clear.
Mac, I go with you though. Maybe it is a transcription. By the time it went from the hand to the press,
Yeah,
got a little bit changed, maybe. I think you're onto something there.
it's not want of friend and it's circumstances of lot. Like it's
both of them are or and
yeah. And in this second this other version here with the lowercase lot.
And now we have the text correctors on our PC and text correctors that change things like that. For example, I work with 3 different languages, and it's always changing from one to another, the text corrector. So I give a different message when I don't mean to. If I don't go back and read it, it goes from Spanish to Catalan to French, and it changes the text corrector on my telephone, or messages go out wrong.
On this version that just got sent out, to my eye, they're both lowercase L's. Is that what everyone else is seeing?
Yeah.
no, this is my deductive reasoning. I think this is a transcription. I don't think it's the same hand. And I think the lot in the first one is definitely capitalized, but I'm going with the of.
You going with the of in the first one, the one with the capital L lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two
So
ofs.
Version is of and lowercase L for
of
lot.
is what Dickinson wrote, and it wasn't simply a transcription error here in the second version.
You think it was actually her handwriting, Max?
Oh, no. I'm following your hypothesis there that it's a different hand, but that this person has accurately transcribed of and not replaced or with of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So that or could have been an editor's choice, an intellectual choice, not a visual choice.
Yeah, or maybe, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Could we look at the poem and say what it means? What would be the version?
I think this one is really hard. I think this was like a very difficult first essay assignment. It's just, we've done a lot of talking about the, some of the textual, potential textual differences and what they might signify. But the poem itself, just to grapple with this, it's a beast. Like,
I loved this as my first essay assignment, though.
then great.
Because there's so much good in it, and like it haunts you once you start thinking about it.
You know what? You know what's haunting me is I wrote my essay like 5 years ago. I can't find it in the archives, and I have no idea what the heck I said. I wrote in, and I asked, well, anyway, because I know I've changed quite a bit since I wrote that.
What about the dashes? The version has a dash after loneliness. The others don't have a dash after that. Is that important?
But you don't stop. If you just go on. Loneliness that may die, or loneliness that may die. Could you read it again, Mark, the first two? You read it with the dash and without?
I don't know whether I can do that. Okay, I will try my best. The difference is that when there is a dash, you make a pause. There is another loneliness that many die without, and you can also post-modify loneliness. There is another loneliness that many die without, or is it? It is an enjambment, but usually we stop at the end and make a pause. But
I
isn't
think
that
she ran out of
almost
space on the paper.
second?
She ran out of space on the paper. So there's the edge of the paper dictates the end. So it's got a pause just because it's the end of a line. So it's not terribly important that the dash is there, but there wasn't room. There wasn't room. She already had to cram the second S down in the way it's written is the S. She doesn't really have room to fit it at the end of the piece of paper. So she had to put it down below in a curve. So it makes you think she's finished this thought, but she's going to cram it in there because she doesn't want you to break before you get that whole word.
I mean, everything makes sense. It is a kind of end of the line, and you pause. You have this enjambment. It goes on in the next line with this relative clause. We would stop at the end, but I think that, well, I would say I need the dash, because the dash indicates here you have the pause, and what happens? I'm feeling a loneliness because I'm alone. I'm the only one who is with this poem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What would you say is this other loneliness? Are there different versions of loneliness? Lonelinesses?
I mean, she's telling us there are, as the first line. She's starting with there's another one, so she knows that we all know there's at least one. And she's telling us there's another one, and then she explains what it means to her. Or I mean, she doesn't really specify what it means to her. She's like, this is the general truth. There's two, or at least more than one. Could be even more, I don't know. But the first stanza basically seems like her saying, this is there's just another way of looking at the normal loneliness that you might feel. To me, it seemed like she was telling us there's loneliness and then there's solitude. That may be just a different way of looking at the same phenomenon. But I mean, if you look at the text, in the second stanza, she says it's like something that comes with nature, which is mostly her. Isn't it something that she connects with, like divinity often? So that's a complete new thing coming in there. Yeah, but I think generally, if you have to summarize it, I think she's talking about there's the external kind of loneliness if you are alone, and then there's the solitude if you feel something from within, which is the other loneliness.
It's loneliness that's not negative, it's positive, it's richer. Well, the idea that I had was that this is meta-poetical.
Yes.
When the writer is or a poet is writing poetry, he is alone. That is this loneliness. But you aren't really alone because you're writing for someone. You're talking to someone. And when you read poetry, how do you do that? You're also alone. Nothing is meant to distract you. You love your loneliness. You are together with that book, and you get richer by understanding what someone told you.
So,
Sense?
so it's like a poetic loneliness,
right?
Like this loneliness afforded by the space of the poem, which is like not a negative loneliness, as Junia was saying, but rather kind of like a form of solitude.
That
Yeah, no, that's yeah, it's interesting though. I think that still kind of complicates a little bit the kind of like intersubjective thing that like we would kind of bring with a typical ModPo analysis, right? Where it would be like, oh, you know, the poet and the reader are sort of communing together in the space of this poem. It's interesting then to call it loneliness, right? Like to really reassert, it's Frostian, I suppose, if to use like, like to jump ahead in the class and how, we start to, or how we encounter different poems that challenge or purport to challenge something like intersubjectivity. To have something like loneliness, rather than she says, because she says loneliness and not like there's another solitude or there is another um I don't know. I think solitude is really. I can't think of another word that would work better there. But yeah, she says loneliness, right? Like she wants to evoke the negative connotation, which I think is interesting, in order to challenge us, and in order also to, I think, like assert loneliness, like this idea of being alone, like.
So her own experience, I suggested also having a biographical approach towards the
Yeah.
poem. Emily Dickinson was alone most of the time, and I think what she's saying here is that it's not negative when you are alone, or not at all negative.
Yeah. I mean, that's the challenge she wants to pose, right? And I think that's really underscored by the second line, that many die without. She's
Without.
the idea
Yeah.
of dying alone, right? That's the great existential fear,
Yeah.
that's sort of
Yes.
which all of human civilization is essentially founded. And so she then like she goes right, this sort of like this real contrarian move, right, where she's like, oh yeah, everybody's gonna die alone, but I'm gonna die alone in the good way, because I have found that other kind of loneliness that all of you don't know, which I think it's an interesting like flex, right? She's like dying alone is not so bad, and it's it's really like it's a poem that really like I don't know, I feel like it's right off the bat it wants to like it's got like its fists up, it like wants to battle you a little bit and make you feel kind of awkward.
Yeah, I had
Applying the negative.
With her. Sorry, Terry.
I just said, and implying the negative.
Yeah.
There's another loneliness, so it implies the one, and then die without. A lot of people read it as that many die without means only a few get it.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
from the get-go implies the negative.
Right. Only this elite will die alone with the right loneliness. It's so much it's really like it's a little contrarian. It's a little bit like
it ties in with her not having published her poems. I think she was so prolific. She loved the whole process itself. So what she's telling us is that she loved the process of her craft, which she did in her moments of solitude, that these poems came to her, that she puzzled over them, and she made them into these puzzles for us during these moments of solitude. And so it's kind of really, it's very nice, because I mean that's what we try to tell ourselves, right? That we have to enjoy the process, to enjoy the journey, not the destination. So it's like, I don't know, ties in with her, the fact that she never really sought fame and wanting to publish and stuff like that.
And I think that sets us up nicely for the second stanza here, right? Like because like, okay, so yeah, there's the biographical reading, Mark, which I think is important, right? Like she did in fact like live and work alone, right? But she's also telling us right off the bat, like, there's the loneliness I'm writing about is not the one that you associate with me, future reader, right? Like this is not the loneliness that's occasioned by want of friend or the circumstances of lot, right? Like she lacked friends and she had these circumstances in which she essentially lived her life alone. She's saying there's this other loneliness, right? That's like it has nothing even to do with the fact that I'm physically isolated, or that I'm isolated or something. It's like there's another loneliness. It's a little, yeah, I don't know what, I'm curious what everybody made of the.
I actually was thinking about that quite a bit because I thought there was a negative connotation, but I thought that this was an existential loneliness and that she thought it was a good thing to have this some sort of painful experience, this idea of longing for something and recognizing that there is something that is not in her life in some way, be it truth or God, I'm not sure quite what it was, but the recognition that there is something bigger and greater that you don't have within you, to me, is this other loneliness. And it's not all these other quotidian lonelinesses that people have all the time.
That's true. You know, when you tie up the reveal, it kind of makes it more mystic because then you go to revelation, right?
Yeah, right.
And so it's like kind of, and then the mortal numeral, I myself in my essay, I kind of linked it to kind of, when you talk about, so the opposite of mortal, I mean, if you take mortal numeral, if it's just one, right? That's why we are lonely. Then the opposite of mortal is immortal. So you address somebody, the immortal one. But then the mortal one is, I mean, is almost reaching, that kind of state, but then he doesn't. I don't know. So it's like he's on the brink. But that's Emily. She always touches on some kind of mystic thing in her poem.
And if you take the opposite, the not a numeral, you go immortal letter, immortal word. You go, instead of numbers, it's words.
Yeah.
Immortal word.
Yeah.
This is
I'm sorry, I don't follow. Can you explain?
So, well, you take the opposite of the word. She set you up for that from the beginning. So it's mortal. The opposite is immortal. The kind of the opposite in our thinking is not words and numbers. So the opposite is words or letters. So then you translate it to immortal words. And that's who she's writing for, us. This loneliness, she doesn't have the loneliness because she's communing with future readers.
I see.
Just from you, Vijaya.
Yeah, no, I was looking at is richer than could be divulged or revealed by mortal numeral. That is, I mean, she's asserting that mortals can, that it cannot be divulged by us. This loneliness is experienced, but it cannot be divulged. Like when we think about how, I don't know, when you think about the seekers, like you think of a Buddha, and it's like they say that Buddha's main thing was he was always silent. His most the best sermon that he gave was the one of where he was silent. So it's like mortal numeral cannot reveal it. It's like it's a loneliness. That's like the metaphysical kind of, I don't know what you call nirvana or whatever kind of. I mean, she touches upon it, but I think I like the thing that it's more metaphysical, like she's talking about her poetry. I prefer that because this takes us somewhere else.
Yeah, do you think it's reachable then, the other loneliness? Because if you say that it's like not, you can't really experience it as immortal, because it's not revealed to you. Is it then something you still can experience in our reading right now as a poet, or do you think it's still further off?
I don't know.
I like the version with the dash on the end, because then you can imagine that it will be in the next line or something, or if you just keep thinking about it, it will come to you. So to me, the ending dash is very important.
Did anyone else think of numeral in terms of things that are countable and quantifiable versus things that may exist and be real but aren't things that can be counted?
Ooh, interesting. So it's sort of qualitative, quantitative.
Yes, that because to me, I didn't think so much about the mortal part. I was thinking more about, okay, what can we count? We can count how many friends somebody has, or how much
Yes.
wealth they have, and how many books they've had published or poems they've written. But there are all these other things that are of value, and certainly Emily values things that aren't countable. And I wondered if that's what she meant by mortal numeral.
Yes, yes. I think it was Jim Lynch post where he talks about this mortal numeral, Suzanne. He talks about this in his post, and he has a beautiful take. He talks about how we can count people, but the soul itself is like infinite.
Ah,
Counting. So, he does that. I don't know if you read that post.
I read a lot of posts on this poem, so I'm not sure.
And I thought of the prime numbers, but the prime numbers are lonely because they can't enter into action with any other numbers.
Ooh.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But I like this idea of what's what's countable, or what's not countable. And I think that's that's like a theme that I think is structuring at least this session today, especially when we get to the next this
There was a lot of talk even in the post about the word befall. The word befall is very right.
Jaya, for a minute about mortal. Hold on before you go on this mortal numeral. As you were saying, Max, that the things that can be counted, but they are going to expire too. They're mortal. So you can count these things, but they aren't eternal. The things that we count.
Yeah.
So it's a like the circumstance or lot. It's
right.
It's the tomorrow's circumstances. She implies that as well.
That's that's
it's mortal. It goes away at
right. All these things that we count, that we can kind of observe empirically, right? It's they have this sort of they're temporary, or they're fleeting, they're worldly, they're
yeah, but it's almost like it's your accounts. You've done your accounts for the day, and then somebody comes in and buys another piece of candy. When you send the account, you got to figure in that piece of candy, because it's stuff that it's mortal. It's going to go. It's not fixed.
Yeah.
It's not immortal. It's not set in stone. It's an accounting that we've made that tomorrow now we have 41 friends instead of 40. Just okay. Go on. It's a default.
That's great. It also just makes me. It makes me think real quick too of what the opposite of the mortal numeral would be, which is of course the immortal word. And so that seems to be a little bit implied here at the end, right? The word, of course, being in the Christian tradition, the word of God, right? Like the word is this. I think we talk about this in ModPo, like there's this sort of whole tradition, right? But the word has these divine connotations.
Yeah, but I think Vijaya's thing is better that it's her work. That's the poetry, not the divine thing.
Yeah. But there's, I think I would agree. I think there's this frequent Dickinsonian thing where there is this blurring of what Dickinson does and the divine. Like we see that all.
Yeah.
And that's why she's such a she's so fascinating and kind of like radical, right? I guess if we were to say, right? Like she plays a lot with what would have been these kinds of religious conventions of the time, and sort of slots herself in them, and equates herself with gods, with God, the Judeo-Christian God, and various other divine figures, frequently.
To me, it feels more like the sensitivity to poetry, not poetry itself, but like poetry is something that's immortal or bigger, and some people are sensitive to it. Many die without connection to poetry. And if the sensitivity to poetry befalls you, then we get this one stage higher.
I don't think that the divine word is so far-fetched. Emily Dickinson was quite religious, and if you consider the meter, it's ballad meter that is typical for hymns, for church songs, and she has this quite in a quite regular form in this poem.
I think there's a difference that I always see, and I think maybe you were getting to that, Max, that she's religious, and I mean, I think maybe everyone in New England at that time was like, you know, it wasn't today. It's a brave thing to say I'm an atheist in America. We just kind of don't say that. So especially then, you didn't say things like that, and your education was with the Bible, and so these are the universal references. But I think she was also, you know, she had embraced the transcendentalism, which was a little bit more like existentialism. You've got to make your own right. You don't just take the dogma as your right. So I think she was making her own religion, and so alludes to it and certainly knows it. But I don't think that she would make this in praise of God poem. That's just my take. What do you guys think?
Yeah, she refused to go to the church, right? She stopped going to the church. That's what I heard, that she no longer wanted to. And that was pretty radical in those days, right? To stop going to church, like when everybody goes to church.
Also connecting the divine with poetry and poets in general, I think, is something that she does often in her poetry. I think that's I can't remember what it's called now, but I think it's called I Reckon When I Count at All or something. First poets, then the sun, and then something else, and then the heavens of God. But then in the end she says that the poets kind of encompass all of the other things. So they are basically the most divine, I mean not the most, but one of the things that can grasp the divine in contrast to everyone else. And that's something that this poem does maybe as well, at least in our reading right now.
True.
Okay, and here, European folks, I'm reading the Man Without Qualities, Robert Musil. He says, this is the 1912, I think, or so, that we're over this period where the church is God. It's now art is God.
Right, that's a very modernist gesture from the time.
So look at Emily Proto; she's heading there.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can start to see that here for sure.
What about the comma or no comma after but nature? Is that important?
Oh yeah, that line is
structures the sentence. Where does sometimes belong to? Is it the repetition that refers to thought, or is it sometimes that refers first to nature and the second sometimes refers to thought?
I interpreted that sentence, like I rewrote that sentence grammatically. I said, because you have to go to the previous one, not want or friend occasions it. So, but nature sometimes occasions it, and sometimes thought occasions it. That's how I split it. So,
that's how I split it too.
Yeah. So it's like it's going. So, like he's talking about this befalls to some people by nature, and I don't know what he means. And then some people's because of like who work with the mind, thought kind of who like I don't know. So how do you kind of divide these people who are kind of naturally kind of inclined to this loneliness, and people who think that is the writers and the poets, right? And the painters who work in solitude. I don't know. I mean, that's
Mark,
the puzzle that she has put forth, right?
Right. And what about the comma, Vijaya? Mark was asking about the comma. Do you think it's a pause?
That's a grammatical thing, but nature sometimes, because I think that's an adverb, which is the adverb sometimes is kind of I don't know, what do you say? It's qualifying the verb, occasions it sometimes. So it's qualifying that verb.
So what about the comma? Why
and then
comma?
And the next sometimes, you have to put a comma there because you are separating them. The next sometimes is applies
to the comma after nature. That are versions that have but nature, comma.
You know, I don't remember too much of my school grammar, but I don't know whether you put a comma after before the adverb. I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, you don't.
I think
You don't generally.
Right. You don't.
But you could have it as a qualifier, right? But nature sometimes thought.
And that's how I read it.
Bob the Builder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So
It's not necessary. So it's definitely a pause. It's definitely, if you put the comma in there, it's asking you to think about the word nature.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something very musical about it. It's like a long musical kind of thing, you know, it's like an expanding musical, that repetition, right? It's like it makes you stop. It's like if you imagine in a song, you know, it's like an extension. I don't know.
Maybe a rest. Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
The pause in that you put in when you have the first comma kind of makes it rarer that nature gives you the opportunity.
Yes, yes.
It almost has this effect with, I mean, if we're looking at
the comma makes it rarer. No,
I mean, when you say but nature sometimes, then it's it happens in maybe 40% to make it a mortal numeral, but nature sometimes. Then it's much more almost, well, let's say it's divine that nature grants you the opportunity to have this other kind of loneliness.
Is it something to do with inspiration, the muses, right? Some inspired poets maybe, and then some other poets who work on it, sometimes not. I don't know. She's such a, she really makes puzzles.
That's right or wrong. I read it in two different ways. First, Jerome, as you read that, it's where's the line? But nature, okay, that but nature sometimes not, but nature sometimes. And the other version is but nature sometimes, and the repetition stresses the sometimes that is related to thought.
Oh, wow.
And as it is typical for Emily Dickinson, everything is so ambiguous. We do not
know.
Why we love her.
All that we come up here in our diverse readings.
It's almost like she questions if it happens with thought, you know, in your reading. But nature, sometimes thought, it's very tentative.
No. I think it's
no?
So sure that sometimes. Thanks.
Nice.
Sorry, nature's a given, but sometimes thought.
Right.
Stay with nature, yeah.
I think is, but sometimes, but nature sometimes you can also switch. Sometimes
that
nature.
Sounds right. Yeah,
then
that makes sense.
Sometimes, which is totally different sometimes, and that refers to thought.